The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Willow Creek. When Dr. Evangeline Thorne stepped out of her small clinic, medical bag in hand. She'd been the town's only physician for 3 years, but the whispers that followed her wherever she went had grown louder in recent weeks, more venomous, more dangerous, which she heard Mrs. Patterson hiss to her companion as they passed. No natural woman should know the things she knows. It ain't right. Evangeline kept her chin high, her steps measured and professional, but each word cut deeper than the last. She dedicated her life to healing, had saved countless lives in this frontier town. But all it took was one patient dying under mysterious circumstances for suspicion to bloom like poison ivy in the minds of the fearful. The trouble had started 2 weeks ago when Thomas Brennan, the town's most prominent businessman, had died suddenly despite her best efforts. His widow, consumed by grief and looking for someone to blame, had begun spreading whispers that Evangeline practiced unnatural medicine, that she'd cursed Thomas rather than trying to heal him. She's got books full of strange symbols, Mrs. Brennan had told anyone who would listen. Speaks in foreign tongues when she thinks no one's listening. And those herbs she uses, they ain't Christian herbs, mark my words. The truth was far more mundane, but no less threatening to the small minds of Willow Creek. Evangeline had been educated in Boston, had studied not just traditional medicine, but also the healing practices of various cultures. She spoke Latin, knew the medicinal properties of plants that most frontier doctors had never heard of, and kept detailed journals of her treatments to the suspicious and uneducated. Knowledge itself had become evidence of witchcraft. Now, as she made her way to the home of the Hendersons, whose youngest son had fallen ill with fever, Evangeline felt the weight of hostile stares like physical blows. Children ducked behind their mothers' skirts when she passed. Men touched their hat brims, but wouldn't meet her eyes. The isolation was becoming unbearable. She was so lost in her troubled thoughts that she almost missed the commotion at the edge of town. A crowd had gathered around a wagon, and she could hear shouting, the sound of horses in distress. Her medical instincts overrode her personal concerns, and she hurried toward the disturbance. Get back, give him air, she called out, pushing through the crowd to find a man lying unconscious beside an overturned wagon. His leg was bent at an unnatural angle, and blood seeped from a gash on his forehead. Don't let her touch him. Mrs. Brennan's voice cut through the crowd like a blade. She'll curse him like she cursed my Thomas. Evangeline ignored the woman. Kneeling beside the injured man, he was tall and lean, with sun-weathered skin and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. His breathing was shallow, his pulse weak but steady. The leg was definitely broken, and he likely had a concussion. He needs immediate attention, Evangeline said, looking up at the crowd. Help me get him to my clinic. We should wait for the circuit doctor, someone said. He'll be through next month. He'll be dead by then, Evangeline said firmly, beginning to examine the man's injuries. As her hands moved over his body, checking for further damage, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of rightness, of purpose. This was what she was meant to do. She's touching him with those cursed hands. Mrs. Brennan shrieked, stop her. But something had changed. In the crowd, perhaps it was the professional competence with which Evangeline worked, or the obvious severity of the man's injuries, but several people stepped forward to help lift him. My name is Evangeline Thorne, she said to the unconscious man as they carried him toward her clinic. I'm going to take care of you. The man's eyelids fluttered at the sound of her voice, and for a moment, kind eyes met hers. Then he slipped back into unconsciousness, but not before she saw something that made her breath catch. There had been no fear in his gaze, no suspicion, just trust. In her clinic, with the door firmly closed against the murmuring crowd, Evangeline worked with the focused intensity that had made her one of the most promising medical students in her Boston class. She cleaned and stitched the head wound, set and splinted the broken leg, and administered a carefully measured dose of laudanum for the pain. As she worked, she found herself talking to her patient, a habit she'd developed over the years. You're lucky, you know. This could have been much worse. The break is clean. Should heal well if you follow instructions. though I suspect you're not the type to follow instructions easily." She was cleaning the last of the blood from his forehead when his eyes opened again, alert this time and aware. "Ma'am," his voice was rough, confused. "Where am I?" "You're in my clinic in Willow Creek. You were in an accident. Your wagon overturned." Evangeline moved to his side, her professional manner firmly in place. "I'm Dr. Thorne. How do you feel?" The man tried to sit up, then thought better of it as pain shot through his leg. "Like I've been trampled by a stampede." "Dr. Thorne, you said. You're the one who patched me up." "I am. You have a concussion and a broken leg. You'll need to stay still for a few days." He studied her face with those kind brown eyes, and Evangeline found herself holding her breath. This was usually the moment when patients realized she was the witch doctor they'd heard whispered about. "Thank you," he said simply. "I'm Nathan Cross. I own a ranch about 10 miles north of here." "Mr. Cross." Evangeline felt an unfamiliar warmth at his straightforward gratitude. "You should rest now. I'll check on you in a few hours." "Dr. Thorne?" Nathan's voice stopped her as she reached the door. "Those people outside, they seemed upset about something. Are you in some kind of trouble?" Evangeline hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Some people in town have concerns about my methods. They believe I practice witchcraft." Nathan was quiet for a long moment, then surprised her by chuckling. "Witchcraft? Well, if you're a witch, you're a damn good one." "I've never felt better care from anyone's hands." The simple acceptance in his voice nearly brought tears to Evangeline's eyes. It had been so long since someone had looked at her work and seen healing rather than something sinister. "Rest now," she said softly. "We'll talk more when you're stronger." But as she left the room, Evangeline couldn't shake the feeling that Nathan Cross's arrival in her life might be more significant than a simple medical case. In a town that had grown increasingly hostile to her presence, she'd found someone who looked at her hands and saw a healer rather than a witch outside. The crowd had largely dispersed, but Mrs. Brennan remained with a few of her most devoted followers. "Mark my words," she was saying, "that man will be cursed now. She's got her claws in him." Evangeline ignored the woman's poison, but she couldn't ignore the truth behind it. By treating Nathan Cross, by being seen as effective and competent, she'd likely made herself an even bigger target for the town's suspicions. But as she prepared medicines for Nathan's recovery, Evangeline found herself humming for the first time in weeks. For the first time since arriving in Willow Creek, she felt like she was truly practicing medicine rather than just surviving the practice of it. And maybe, just maybe, she'd found someone who could see past the whispers to the truth of who she really was. Nathan Cross had been in Evangeline's clinic for 3 days, and already the change in her daily routine was remarkable. For the first time in months, she looked forward to her rounds, eager to check on her patient who greeted her each morning with a genuine smile and intelligent questions about his treatment. "The swelling in your leg has gone down considerably," she told him as she unwrapped the splint to examine his progress. "You're healing remarkably well. Good hands," Nathan said, watching her work with obvious admiration. "My grandmother always said you could tell a person's character by their hands. Yours are gentle, but sure the hands of someone who truly cares." Evangeline felt heat rise in her cheeks at the unexpected compliment. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." She was. "She'd have liked you, I think. She used to say that healing was the closest thing to magic that existed in this world, but it was good magic. God's magic." "What would she have thought about the accusations against me?" Evangeline asked, surprising herself with the question. She'd been trying not to think about the growing hostility outside her clinic walls. Nathan's expression grew serious. "She'd have said that people fear what they don't understand, and that fear makes them cruel. But she also would have said that truth has a way of revealing itself to those who need to see it." "And what do you see when you look at me, Mr. Cross?" Nathan met her gaze directly, and Evangeline felt her breath catch at the intensity in his brown eyes. "I see a woman who's dedicated her life to helping others. I see someone who's been treated badly by people who should be grateful for her gifts. And I see..." He paused, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "I see someone who's been alone for too long." The observation hit closer to home than Evangeline had expected. She'd been alone for years, even before coming to Willow Creek. Her dedication to medicine had cost her friendships, potential suitors, and any semblance of a normal social life. Being alone can be a choice, she said carefully. Sometimes it's easier than dealing with other people's expectations and fears. Easier, maybe, but not better. Nathan shifted slightly, wincing as the movement pulled at his injuries. I've been alone on my ranch for 5 years now. Built it up from nothing, made it profitable, made it beautiful. But at the end of the day, when the work is done, there's nobody to share it with. What happened to make you choose solitude? Nathan was quiet for a long moment. My wife died in childbirth. Baby too. I blamed myself, blamed God, blamed everyone except the person who actually deserved blame. Nobody. Sometimes terrible things just happen, and there's no one to blame. Evangeline felt her heart clench with sympathy. I'm sorry for your loss. It was a long time ago. But it taught me something about grief, about blame, about how people need someone to be responsible when bad things happen. Sound familiar? The parallel to her own situation wasn't lost on Evangeline. You think that's what's happening with me? That people need someone to blame for Thomas Brennan's death? I think people are afraid of death, and they're afraid of anyone who deals with it regularly. They want to believe that if they just avoid the witch doctor, death won't find them. But you're not afraid of me, Nathan smiled, and the expression transformed his weathered face. Dr. Thorne, you've had your hands on my body for 3 days, checking wounds, setting bones, administering medicine. If you wanted to curse me, you've had plenty of opportunity. Instead, you've done nothing but heal me. That afternoon, as Evangeline was preparing Nathan's evening medications, she heard the clinic door open. She looked up to see Sheriff Davis entering, his expression grim and apologetic. Doc, he said, removing his hat, I'm sorry to disturb you, but I need to talk to you about some concerns that have been raised. Evangeline's stomach dropped. What kind of concerns? Well, there's been talk more than talk, really, about your methods. Some folks are saying you're practicing witchcraft, that you might have been responsible for Thomas Brennan's death. That's ridiculous, Evangeline said, but she could hear the tremor in her own voice. I did everything I could to save Thomas. His heart simply gave out. I know that, Doc, and you know that. But Mrs. Brennan has been stirring up trouble, and some of the other townspeople are getting spooked. They're talking about asking you to leave town. On what grounds? Evangeline demanded. I've broken no laws, committed no crimes, no legal grounds, the sheriff admitted. But you know as well as I do that sometimes legal grounds don't matter much in a place like this. If enough people want someone gone, Sheriff, Nathan's voice came from the back room, stronger than it had been in days. Could you come here? A moment, Sheriff Davis looked surprised but followed Evangeline to Nathan's room. Nathan was sitting up in bed, his color much improved, though he was still obviously in pain. Nathan Cross, he said, extending his hand to the sheriff. I own the Cross Ranch north of town. I know who you are, Mr. Cross. Heard about your accident. How are you feeling? Better every day. Thanks to Dr. Thorne's excellent care. Nathan's voice carried a note of emphasis that made the sheriff look at him more carefully. Sheriff, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation with the doctor. Are you seriously considering running the best physician this town has ever had out of Willow Creek? Well, it's not really up to me. It's exactly up to you, Nathan interrupted. You're the law here, and unless I'm mistaken, practicing medicine isn't illegal in this territory. No, sir, it's not. But if the townspeople are being led by a grieving widow who's looking for someone to blame for her husband's death. I understand grief, Sheriff. I've been there. But grief doesn't give someone the right to destroy an innocent woman's life. Sheriff Davis shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Cross, I appreciate your support of the doctor, but you don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly, Nathan said, his voice growing hard. I understand that you've got a mob forming against a woman whose only crime is being educated for their comfort. I understand that you're considering bowing to pressure from ignorant people who would rather have no doctor than one who doesn't fit their narrow idea of what a woman should be. Nathan, Evangeline said softly, you don't have to. Yes, I Do. Nathan's eyes never left the sheriff's face. Sheriff, I'm one of the largest landowners in this area. I employ a dozen men. I bring significant business to this town, and I vote in every election. I'm telling you right now that if Dr. Thorne is forced to leave Willow Creek, I'll take my business elsewhere, and I'll make sure every rancher and businessman I know does the same. The sheriff's eyes widened. Mr. Cross, surely you don't mean, I mean every word. Nathan's voice was steady, implacable. This town needs Dr. Thorne far more than it needs to appease a few frightened people. And I'll be damned if I'll stand by and watch good people be destroyed by ignorance and fear. After the sheriff left, promising to think about what Nathan had said, Evangeline sank into the chair beside Nathan's bed. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. Yes, I did. Someone had to stand up for you. And it seems like I'm the only one with the sense to do it. You barely know me. Why would you risk your business, your reputation, for someone you've known for 3 days? Nathan reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. Because in 3 days, you've shown me more genuine care and compassion than I've experienced in 5 years. Because you're a healer, and healers are precious, and because, he paused, his thumb tracing across her knuckles, because I think I'm falling in love with you. Evangeline's breath caught. Nathan, you can't. I mean, you're injured, you're grateful. But I'm not a man who confuses gratitude with love, Nathan said firmly. And I'm not a man who speaks lightly of such things. I love the way you talk to me like I have a brain in my head. I love the gentleness in your hands and the strength in your voice. I love that you've dedicated your life to helping others, even when those others treat you badly. The townspeople will never accept me, Evangeline whispered. They'll never accept us. Then we'll make our own acceptance, Nathan said. At my ranch, away from their whispers and their fears, you can have a proper medical practice there. Serve the ranchers and their families, people who care more about results than rumors. You're asking me to leave everything I've built here. I'm asking you to build something new with me, something better. Evangeline looked at their joined hands, at the trust and hope in Nathan's eyes, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the possibility of a future that included not just her calling as a healer, but also love, partnership, and acceptance. I'll think about it, she said softly. That's all I ask. Nathan lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. That's all I ask. Outside, the sun was setting over Willow Creek, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. But inside the clinic, in the quiet intimacy of the sick room, two people who had been alone for too long began to imagine what it might be like to be alone together, and discovered that it didn't sound like loneliness at all. The confrontation came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after Nathan's accident. Evangeline had just finished checking his leg. The bone was healing perfectly, and he'd be able to travel within a few days when the clinic door burst open. Mrs. Brennan stood in the doorway, flanked by a dozen townspeople, their faces set with the grim determination of a lynch mob. Behind them, Sheriff Davis shifted uncomfortably, his hand resting on his gun belt more from habit than any real intention to use it. Evangeline Thorne, Mrs. Brennan announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who believed righteousness was on her side. You are no longer welcome in this town. You have until sundown to pack your belongings and leave Willow Creek forever. Evangeline rose from her chair slowly, her medical bag clutched in her hands like a shield. On whose authority? On the authority of decent Christian people who won't stand by, while a witch practices her dark arts in our midst. Mrs. Brennan replied, You killed my husband with your unnatural medicine, and we won't let you kill anyone else. I did not kill your husband, Evangeline said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. Thomas died of heart failure. I tried everything in my power to save him. Your power. Mrs. Brennan spat. Unnatural power. Devil's power. We've all seen those strange books you read. Heard you muttering in foreign tongues. No Christian woman needs such things to heal. Those books are medical texts, Evangeline said, frustration bleeding into her voice. The foreign tongues are Latin, the language of science and medicine. Everything I do is based on modern medical knowledge, modern medicine, repeated. Tom Patterson, Mrs. Brennan's brother, that's just another word for witchcraft. Our grandmothers got along fine without your kind of medicine. Your grandmothers also died of diseases that are easily treatable today, Evangeline replied. They lost children to infections that could be prevented with proper sanitation. Enough. Mrs. Brennan's voice cut through her words like a blade. We didn't come here to listen to your lies. We came to see you gone. And if I refuse to leave, the crowd shifted restlessly. And Evangeline could see the barely contained violence in their eyes. These weren't evil people. She realized they were frightened people who had been told that their fear had a name and a face, and that if they could just eliminate that face, they would be safe. Then we'll make you leave, said another voice from the crowd. One way or another, that's enough. Nathan's voice came from the doorway to the back room. He was leaning heavily on a makeshift crutch, his face pale from the effort of standing. But his eyes were blazing with controlled fury. All of you, get out of Dr. Thorne's clinic. Now. Mr. Cross, Mrs. Brennan said, her voice taking on a syrupy tone. You don't understand. This woman has bewitched you. She's made you think she's helped you. But what? Nathan interrupted, taking a painful step forward. She's made me think I can walk on a leg that was broken in 3 places a week ago. She's made me think this head wound has healed without infection. She's made me think I'm alive when I should be dead. She's clouded your mind. Mrs. Brennan insisted. Made you see things that aren't there. Nathan laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Lady, my mind is perfectly clear. Clear enough to see that you're all about to make the biggest mistake this town has ever made. And what mistake is that? Tom Patterson demanded. You're about to drive out the best doctor this territory has ever seen because you're too ignorant to recognize healing when you see it. Nathan's voice carried the authority of a man used to being obeyed. Dr. Thorne has saved more lives in this town than any of you have bothered to count. But because she's educated, because she's knowledgeable, because she's a woman who doesn't fit your narrow ideas of what a woman should be, you want to destroy her. She's a witch, Mrs. Brennan said flatly, and witches must be driven out. She's a doctor. Nathan replied just as flatly, and doctors should be treasured. Sheriff Davis stepped forward, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Mr. Cross, maybe you should let the townspeople handle this. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years, Nathan said. Clear enough to know that if you force Dr. Thorne to leave, you'll have her blood on your hands when the next epidemic hits. Clear enough to know that you're letting fear and ignorance guide you instead of sense and gratitude. Gratitude? Mrs. Brennan's voice rose to a shriek. Gratitude for what? For killing my husband. Your husband died of a weak heart, Nathan said, his voice gentling slightly. I'm sorry for your loss. Truly I am. But Dr. Thorne didn't kill him. She tried to save him, just like she's saved dozens of others in this town. You can't know that, Mrs. Brennan whispered. But Evangeline could hear the first crack in her. Certainty. I can know it, Nathan said firmly, because I've seen her work. I've felt her hands on my wounds, seen the knowledge in her eyes. Witness the miracles she performs every day. Mrs. Brennan, I understand your grief. I know what it's like to lose someone you love and want someone to blame. But Dr. Thorne isn't your enemy. She's your town's greatest blessing. The crowd was beginning to murmur among themselves, doubt creeping into their voices. Evangeline could see the moment when mob mentality began to crack, when individual consciences started to reassert themselves. Even if that's true, Tom Patterson said, she's still unnatural. No woman should know the things she knows. Why not? Nathan asked. Because it threatens you. Because it makes you feel small and ignorant. Well, maybe you should feel small and ignorant. Maybe instead of driving out the person who could teach you, you should be thanking God that she's willing to use her knowledge to help you. Mr. Cross, Sheriff Davis said, I think maybe you should all go home, Nathan interrupted. Before you do something you'll regret for the rest of your lives. But Mrs. Brennan wasn't finished. Fine, she said, her voice cold with hatred. Keep your witch doctor. But don't come crying to us when she kills you too. If Dr. Thorne kills me, Nathan said, it'll be with kindness. Which is more than I can say for what you're trying to do to her. After the crowd had left, muttering and defeated, Evangeline sank into her chair, her hands shaking with reaction. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't. You don't have to thank me, Nathan said, lowering himself carefully into the chair beside her. You just have to answer me one question. What? Will you come with me to my ranch? We can build a proper medical practice there. Serve the people who need you without having to deal with the ignorance and fear. Evangeline looked at him, this man who had stood up for her when no one else would, who had seen her as a healer when everyone else saw a witch, who had offered her not just protection, but partnership. What about love? She asked quietly. You said you were falling in love with me. Was that just gratitude talking? Nathan reached out and took her hands, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. Evangeline, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love your intelligence, your compassion, your strength. I love the way you talk to me like an equal, the way you care about people who don't deserve your care. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how much. And I love you, Evangeline admitted, feeling the truth of it settle into her bones. I love your courage, your kindness, your refusal to let fear make you cruel. I love the way you see me as a person, not just a curiosity or a threat. Then come with me, Nathan said. Be my wife, my partner, my equal. Help me build something beautiful on my ranch, something that includes a proper medical practice and a proper life. Evangeline thought about her clinic, about the 3 years she'd spent building a practice in Willow Creek. But then she thought about the fear in people's eyes, the whispers that followed her, the loneliness that had been her constant companion. Yes, she said, and felt the rightness of it in her heart. Yes, I'll come with you. 2 weeks later, Nathan Cross and Dr. Evangeline Thorne were married in a simple ceremony at Nathan's ranch. The only witnesses were Nathan's ranch hands and a few neighbors who had come to respect Evangeline's skill and knowledge. They built a medical practice that served ranchers and their families for miles around, and Evangeline's reputation as a healer grew beyond the boundaries of ignorant fear. She delivered babies, treated injuries, and saved lives, all while building a life with Nathan that was filled with love, respect, and partnership. Years later, when disease finally did strike the area, it was Evangeline who organized the response, who trained others in proper sanitation and treatment, who saved countless lives through her knowledge and skill. The people of Willow Creek, many of whom had once called her a witch, came to her on their knees, begging for help. She gave it freely, without judgment or recrimination, because that was who she was, a healer who understood that healing was about more than just medical knowledge. It was about compassion, forgiveness, and the willingness to see the good in people even when they couldn't see it in themselves. And Nathan, watching her work with the same gentle hands that had first earned his trust, knew that he had been right to believe in her. The accused healer had become the beloved doctor, and the lonely rancher had found his home in her arms. Their love story became legend in the territory, proof that sometimes the most valuable things come in forms that frighten us, and that true love means seeing the person beneath the fear and choosing to trust in their goodness. The hands that had once been called cursed became known as blessed, and the woman who had been shunned became beloved, because in the end, healing of bodies, of hearts, of communities was the most powerful magic of all. Thank you for following Evangeline and Nathan's powerful journey from suspicion to trust, from fear to love, and from isolation to partnership. This story reminds us that expertise and knowledge should be celebrated, not feared, and that true love sees past society's prejudices to the person beneath. If this tale of courage, healing, and unconditional support moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories about overcoming adversity and finding love in unexpected places. Your support helps us continue sharing these important narratives about the power of choosing understanding over fear. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There are many more inspiring adventures waiting for you.